terms of tax policies that you have already criticized in our podcast, how different do you think the Conservative Party policies on that are? Because nowadays, uh, of course, Keir Starmer is getting criticized mainly on that for raising taxes, etc. Do you think Conservatives would be able to do better job with current leader?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, firstly, respect to Kemi. I think that she is a great Conservative voice, and I think she's going to do a great job at delivering our message.
A bit of culture warrior.
Yeah, she's good on those issues as well. She was talking yesterday about how she fought so hard to close the Tavistock Centre, where criminally young girls were having mutilation towards their own bodies at an underage. That was shocking what happened there. Horrific cover up, and cover up is a big topic at the moment because we're talking about how Pakistani grooming gangs were able to get away with a cover up where the police service decided that we couldn't have a go at them, we couldn't hold them to account because they were not white. That's a shocking thing as well. But yes, Kemi has stood up strongly on what people like to call the culture issues. For me, it's called common sense. Understanding there are two genders, not 72. The people are male or female, not astra or pangender, whatever the new wacky terms are that are out today. That's common sense. Everybody across the country understands it. You come down to East Devon, where I'm from, the great village of Cyprian, you talk about pangender, and people go, pan what? They don't understand what you're talking about. It's absolute nonsense. We need to get back to common sense. I always think Robert Jenry, who ran for leader, is a great man. He's speaking hard on all of these issues like the grooming gangs at the moment, and tremendous respect to the campaign that he fought, which I thought was excellent as well. But yeah, I think we've got leadership that is actually going to stand up for Conservative values now. That's a long ramble, but back to your question, which is actually about tax policy. Yeah, look, I'd be the first to say that there was not enough blue water. We always talk about blue water in politics. I don't just say blue because it's Tory. We need that differentiation between the two parties. It's good for voters to understand the different agendas the party are offering. And if we spoke to a lot of voters at the last election, they didn't understand the difference between the Conservatives and Labour.
It has been very similar.
It's been very similar. But we're starting to get there because Labour have been so left-wing, so socialist on the economy, that we're starting to understand the difference between the parties. And let me give you some common sense examples. Labour believe pensioners should freeze to death, that they should have their winter fuel payments cut. This after they accused us of introducing a dementia tax in the 2017 election. They said a vote for Labour was a vote to save pensions. It's actually a vote for pensioners to die. They didn't do an impact assessment on winter fuel payments because they knew the danger it would leave pensioners in. Conservatives will always stand up for pensioners. The problem that we have in this society today is that older people worked so hard. This is the generation of Dig for Victory. This is the generation of rationing in the Second World War. This is the generation of fleeing as young kids to the countryside, to bomb shelters, to avoid German bombs. They worked their socks off to rebuild this country from the ashes, and now it's our turn as younger people to give something back to them. They deserve a fair retirement, they deserve fair money, and they deserve their winter fuel payments. That's issue one. Two, farmers. Farmers produce our food across this country. They keep us afloat as a country. And we have introduced this sickening family farm tax, which is going to hit so many farmers across this country. Anybody with estates over, I think it's £1 million, are now going to have their land taxed. Now, Labour say this is a lot of money, but it's not, because farmers are asset rich. They're not cash rich. Many of them only make about £30,000 a year. What happens if the farmers go out of business? We can't produce as much food yet. What happens if that happens? We have to import it from another country. And here's the hypocrisy. Here's the irony. Labour say they're against climate change. Then they introduce a budget that's going to make us flying more food in on gas-guzzling planes, sucking in all that carbon dioxide. They're not really on the side of climate. And then issue three, I believe truly that Conservatives do believe in cutting tax for business. When we were in government, we introduced tax cuts. Corporation tax was at a record low under the Conservatives. And we did some very good work on national insurance, a criminal second tax on work, cutting that tax. Do I want us to have done more? Yes. Should income tax come down when we financially can afford it? Of course it should. Should we stop taxing people so much when they first get into a job? Absolutely. And Reform put a good policy forward at the election. First 20,000 you earn, you shouldn't be taxed on. I liked that policy. Unfortunately, Reform didn't come up with a way to pay for it. I think we should come up with a way to pay for it, and then we should run that. I do think we need to work on the tax system, and particularly people going to apprenticeships, I think their taxes should be lower as well. So there are now some clear differences between Labour and the Conservatives on the economy, and I hope we'll continue to put common sense economic policy forward. But let's be really clear, you vote for Labour, you're voting to kill pensions because they will not be able to get through the wings that we are with fuel payment. Kill farmers' businesses, meaning we import more food from abroad, and that makes climate change worse, and kill businesses with criminal increases to inheritance tax and business contributions to national insurance. We've driven up the cost of running business, which cuts the jobs, which means it's harder to get a job in Britain. And it's never been harder than today to get a job because we are struggling as an economy. And that's not a party political point. We're just struggling for growth. Don't hammer the businesses. They create the growth.